today, let's quickly introduce ourselves, right? So my name is Misael Soto. Along with these two, we've been carrying on the Miami Artist Census since October. Is when we launched.
Yeah, that's right.
We launched the public part of the census. We'll get into a bit of the history, and we're also going to relate it to our practice today. Yeah, I'm an artist, organizer, and educator here in Miami. I've been here for about 15 years.
I'm Carrie Sieh. I'm an artist and librarian, and I'm originally from California, but I've lived in Miami for at least 15 years now.
And I'm Harmony Honig, and I'm born and raised in Miami, and I'm an interdisciplinary performance artist.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the Miami Artist Census, which we've been doing a bit of, trying to get the word out the last couple months. But to change it up, we decided to kind of speak a bit more specifically and personally about how each of us is involved, and we wanted to relate it to our personal practices as artists. But before we get into that, we're going to discuss a little bit of background about the census itself and what it is. And to do that, we'll start with Artists for Artists. Artists for Artists is a kind of open collective of over 100 artist members here in Miami. It started about 2 years ago, and it very much started just kind of out of a very personal kind of desire and kind of what I was seeing happening. And I did what we do when we just have an itch. We reach out to people we know, friends, colleagues, and I just reached out to people I thought would want to engage in something like this, and I invited them to a reading room in a library in Alapata, and that was the beginnings of what has now become Artists for Artists. Very quickly in those meetings, we started kind of telling stories and talking about the different things that we felt was lacking in our practice, lacking in terms of financial support, infrastructure, important things that we felt we could advocate for and push for and build potentially on our own. And we also started realizing that a lot of these problems were maybe siloed, or at least our understanding of them was a bit siloed. And so we wanted to kind of gain a better understanding of what our fellow artists were struggling with and what their realities were. And so we started looking at other examples around the country, and we very quickly realized that there were some leading examples that we could potentially work with, and we'll get into that in a second. And so the core of the idea really comes out of a grassroots mentality, and this statement really kind of says it, right? It's by us because it's for us. The Miami Artist Census is unlike any other initiative in Miami because it is run by Miami-based artists, and it's for us, as opposed to a lot of other kind of initiatives that say they're, kind of speak to our needs, but are not run by us. Who better knows our struggles than our artists ourselves, right? A little bit of background of the Artists for Artists kind of structure, right? I spoke to how it is this kind of group, very kind of non-hierarchical group of artists. Within that, any kind of artist member, or really any artist in the city can kind of tap in and come to us with problems. And from that, different kind of strands have come out. Some are related to political kind of causes, others as kind of everyday as a crit group. And then the Miami Artist Census is one of such initiatives, right? So In many cases, artists in one group aren't necessarily working or dealing with artists in another group. And so it's very much trying to create something that is, like it says, is non-hierarchical and is really kind of need-based. It follows the needs of the artists, and we advocate for a kind of like judgment-free kind of zone in that way. So back to the census and how it came about. Do you want to maybe tackle this part and talk about how it relates to the Los Angeles Artist Census?
Well, actually, you were the one who reached out first.
This is true. Yeah, definitely. Just okay. Just trying to share the thing here. But yes, so Los Angeles Artist Census is a census that happened in 2020 in LA, of course. I knew about it through friends that live in LA, but I hadn't really given it much thought. And this is kind of like speaking to this idea that a lot of the projects that come out of Artists for Artists are need-based, right? So once we started kind of hitting up against those issues and realizing like, oh, some data would be really helpful in this instance. Once we started doing this research, we found that there was a couple examples, and LA in particular, and Tatiana Vahan, who's in charge or was in charge of the LA Artist Census, we reached out to her and found a lot of kinship with her. And she also
She's from Miami.
She's from Miami.
Yeah,
that's true. So she also kind of has an understanding of what we're going through. I think there's a lot of things in common between LA and Miami, as much as there are a lot of differences, right? Through our year and a half kind of exchange, we started developing kind of a working relationship, and realized that not only could we piggyback off of their research, which is really generous on their part, but we could also contribute to something that she's been hoping for, which is a multi-city kind of database, right? So now the hope is that our data from the Miami Artist Census can be cross-referenced with that of LA. So a lot of the questions are similar for that reason. We also then changed a lot of questions to make them regionally specific. So we won't be able to cross-reference everything, but there's going to be a lot of comparability between the two. And that's really exciting. So I think this is a lot of stuff that we kind of went over already. I think important to note that something that I haven't said yet is that it's county-wide, right? So this gets also into all of the different art worlds of Miami, hopefully, and that's been the goal, right, in terms of outreach. We're all limited as everyone is, in regards to the kind of art world that they exist in. And so this is really trying to create a cast of as wide a net as possible.
We've left the idea of what is an artist up to whoever identifies as an artist, and really the only limit to taking the survey is if you don't live in the county at least 6 months out of the year.
Yeah.
So as long as you self-describe yourself.
Yeah.
Self-describe.
Not sure what I have next. Yeah. So a kind of like simple way to think about the census is that it will help us do these three things. Some people are like, they don't really understand as to why. We were just talking over coffee before coming here about how a lot of this project has struck us in terms of how individualized the experience of the art world here in Miami is, and how we've hit a lot of roadblocks in this project that we maybe didn't expect. And I think a big part of that is a big part of what we're maybe trying to push back on with this project. And so that's where the maybe these steps come in, right? If we can describe our experiences and tell our stories, we can inform people about what it's like to be an artist here in Miami and how that's different than maybe what they imagine, maybe, based on their knowledge of art history, but also maybe based on what, their experiences have been in New York or LA or other cities, which are very different than the experience of being a Miami-based artist.
I'll even say in one of our outreach efforts, we were talking with data scientists and asking a bunch of different questions, and even just a simple question of like, how many working artists do you think actually live in Miami? And people thought that 300,000, 50,000, like these really large numbers, that maybe there are 50,000, self-described artists, but their outsiders' concepts of art and what artists bring, they're blown away. Like, it's really held up on this pedestal, this really inspiring work, and think it's really accessible and think it's really not lucrative necessarily, but as if it's like more honored in practice, right? And being able to sustain yourself enough, which, I mean, depending who you talk to, is really arguable if that's possible, right? To sustain yourself as an artist, just doing art. So yeah, that's where getting the data is so important. How do we actually assess this? What is the truth? And then how can we inform to make our conditions better?
Right, first identifying what the reality is, what the needs are, and then what the potential solutions are.
Yeah, and I guess that speaks to the last thing, right? Persuading, right? So this is the hope is that this will give us a tool to advocate for ourselves as an artist community, and also, potentially, give, a bit of a roadmap to those who want to support us, who claim to support us. So we kind of got into this already, but it's very simple. The idea is that if you're based in Miami, if you're a Miami artist, and this is for you, this is the first of its kind in Florida. It's never been done before, and there's perhaps countless reasons as to why, but we really do feel like now's the time. A lot of folks have been asking us, is this a response to certain things that have happened in our local, state, national politics? And the kind of general answer we've given them is that yes and no, right? Those things are happening and will continue to happen, right? We feel like we will continue to have a limiting of our support, and those actions that are happening now more contemporaneously are just a symptom of a greater issue, which is systemic and has existed for a very long time. I would argue that I've been wanting for something like this to happen for as long as I've been an artist, really.
And the survey is anonymous, so your information of who you are is protected. And with the results, we're trying to make sure to not have a goal, except for the goal being there's public access to the data that's like collated, is that the right word? Like, so that it can be, what? Aggregated, thank you. So that it can be used however the community wants to use it, right? Like, some people might want to affect legislation, right? We did have a huge state funding cut to the arts, right? Maybe this can help with that to get more funding, or maybe people want to stay grassroots and just artists keep organizing for themselves, because to kind of talk to points before, like, we are different artists, so our needs are very different. Some need a space to make their work, some are object oriented, some need access to like computer labs for their work, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's how the data could be used. Yeah, we're just really think that, if you are working here in Miami, it's a great way to get your needs and your experiences documented, so that either you, your community, or others can change the environment here.
Yeah. And also, I think it's important to note that this is really a pilot project. We're planning to repeat this process every 2 years, and hopefully then not only gather more participants each time, but compare the results over time. So that not only can, for example, people who provide funding better understand how to target that funding most effectively, but also to maybe see effects over time.
Yeah, seeing this as a tool, and that tool will become more and more robust the more it exists out in the world. Yeah, definitely. Okay. So very quickly, this is a screenshot right here on the right of the survey itself. If you pull it up on a laptop, it also works on a phone. It's been taking folks approximately 20, 25, 30 minutes at most. I've heard 10 in some cases, which is kind of shocking, but it is what it is. And it is completely anonymous, and it is divided in sections. These sections are here listed: art practice, employment, education, housing, healthcare, debt, and demographics. So these are in each of these sections, there's maybe, I don't know, give or take 5 to 10 questions. And you'll be asked, very kind of specific questions on each of these topics.
Oh yeah, we use the Alchemr software technology for that, which is pretty accessible too for like screen readers and things like that.
Yeah, and also very safe. Like it's one of the best.
Yeah,
top
it has
of the line.
robust data security.
Yeah, it's a lot of data security. Best though on your laptop, we have found. Sometimes there's some just like visual issues on the phone, but you can take it on your phone too.
Nope.
Oh look, you didn't rescale it.
I didn't fix this. It's not good like this. I don't know. Although I'm sorry, Jadane, I didn't fix it. So this is the full team. The two on the right, Jadane and Pamela, have been working with outreach, doing lots of different meetups and things. And then the four of us on the left have been involved from the kind of jump, specifically when we started getting into the nitty-gritty of making the questionnaire Miami specific, which we started around June, May?
Summer.
Yeah, May, June of this year.
Last year.
Of last year? Okay. So as we said, we're gonna talk a little bit about our personal practices and how the census kind of relates in that way.
Hi, I'm Harmony again. So I'm a queer and disabled performance artist. I'm from Miami. I spent some time in New York. I've been directing and writing different performance productions, and I've worked in a few different groups during the pandemic. Part of Theater of the Electric Mouth, we were a online audio theater company, and we make plays and use AI too sometimes. I've been a resident artist at Bakehouse and did some stuff at Manic Contemporary Miami when it was downtown. What else? Oh, I studied at New World School of the Arts, got my degree there in theater, and I also studied in San Francisco Mime Troupe, learning commedia dell'arte and American melodrama. That's kind of my background. This is some images of work that I've done. I've been a lot of my work takes these traditional forms of theater and kind of mixes it in with like kind of postmodern vibes. I love postmodernism, I'm sorry. But I've done a lot of drag. This is during the time when Theater of the Electric Mouth went to those plays. Clowning work, been working with video, and this is Kin, this kind of multimedia immersive performance that we did at the Miami Botanical Gardens. And yeah, I mean, a lot of my work is about being queer and disabled and diasporic, and I'm really into transgressing traditional theater archetypes and playing with storytelling to kind of create different spaces for storytelling, and especially storytelling that focuses on the other and using otherness as this place to connect with others, right? And yeah, so I use a lot of I make a lot of weird noise music. I do drag. I've been playing with sculpture lately. I also bring in a lot of ecological research. I'm really inspired by the environment of Florida and plants and how they relate to being human here. Yeah, I love degeneracy and the collapse of the self and space. Yeah. So a big part of my work is failure and theater, right? And so failure for me has changed over time, and right now I'm really interested in how being a failure creates this portal to a different world, a better world, where I think a lot of my work used to deal with the struggle of being a failure and how do you transform that and how do you take dehumanization and rehumanize yourself and find autonomy. And then now I've been really into no, be a failure. Absolutely failure is the liberation, is the point that you can escape an oppressive system and start to design something outside of it. So thinking a lot more of that. And with that, I come from theater, so theater has always been a collective, and I'm really into the political and the communal legacy of that. Theater creates movements. It, to me, is a top tier expression of community. It's where everyone can come together and find a way to tell their story, and doing it together. The process of making theater is with each other. So to me, that is kind of that world making, right, in the reality and then in the performative. And I think a really good example of that, my work was Kin, which was in April with O Miami at the Miami Beach Botanic Garden. And that work was a lot about how you can see queer modalities of family making within the environment, how plants create these biodiverse communities. They don't have to be related to each other, and they still protect each other and share resources with each other. And so we made this really beautiful, moving play that was immersed in the scenery there, and it kind of even mimicked this sort of life cycle of a plant. And yeah, it was really influenced by family abolition and drag culture of the houses, and also just the non-nuclear relationships that queer people, or just queerness, can create. And then so yeah, how I relate this to why I'm involved in the census is data tells stories, and it tells a lot of stories that we don't get to control sometimes. Also, data can document. Okay, so my personal first interest in this was there's so much performance history in Miami. Little Broadway, the theaters on Cayocho. I've been involved in the drag and the noise scene here for so long. I feel like Miami has such a specific musical sound, and all these things don't ever get enough recognition, in my opinion, in terms of institutional support. And that is something I am really interested in data. I've been trying to get as many people I've worked with and other performing artists, whether they're dance or music or theater, to try and take the survey. I think it's really important that we get our experience documented. And yeah, Miami's story is super critical to be told. We're affected by climate change, we're affected by tourism, we're affected by Southern and Latin American politics. We're environmentally so unique. And that, to me, is why it's so important right now to start collecting our data on our own terms so that we can control our narratives and advocate for ourselves. And because I love theater as this sort of organizing model, that's also why I think data is a great resource for that. Another layer, another expression, another story of collectivizing, right? Yeah, I guess that's really it. And off to whoever's next.
I'm Carrie Sieh. My work is often, or maybe usually, comes out of thinking about gendered expectations of performance throughout history and how that's contextualized in history and culture and individual experience. And I often use textiles and textile techniques symbolically in that pursuit. This one is one of the first pieces I did that is also in the category of work that's about the creation of and storage of and stewardship of information, how it's symbolized and manifested and used or hidden or destroyed or preserved. This is an embroidery, a series of embroideries on old floppy disks, all of which either do or don't have imagery of flowers, of plants that have been crucial to humans throughout history. And obviously, you know, the information stored on these disks is no longer accessible most of the time. This one is from a body of work that was called Secrets, and I sought out participation by inviting people to write down their secrets and put them in the box on the right of this piece. And then I would take some of them and knit them in code into these tapestries or curtains. The title would be what the secret was. And again, here I used enciphered knitting to write, to transcribe poems, actual poems. And this one was inspired by a trip I took to Pompeii and how visual knowledge is preserved, how art is or is not preserved, and how culture is or isn't preserved. And this was actually a piece of a sheet of drywall that I picked up during the demolition of a studio at the Bakehouse when I was a resident there. This one is another cipher that was part of a show that I did that was called Textiles for Men and Machine Breakers, and was about the parallels between the Industrial Revolution and the computer age in terms of gender and labor. This is a piece I've been working on for years. Its title is after the Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, in which there's a French revolutionary who is secretly encoding in her knitting the names of the people that they're going to assassinate. The police question her and ask her what she's making just casually, and she looks at them and says it's a shroud. And it doesn't make any sense to them, but she knows what she's talking about. The Soul Murderers piece of it comes from Henry Gibson's phrase, or definition of soul murder as causing the loss of the love of life in another human being. And so what this piece is hand-embroidered motifs that are actually the enciphered names of rapists and child abusers and domestic abusers that I've been collecting. And I think this might be the last one I have. This is more recent. This is another way that I've more recently been interested in the visualization of information and the contextualization of information. And I think that the backstory behind this one is too long to go into right now. You can ask me about it later. And then more abstractly, this is the first piece I made recently where I take actual information that's on paper and break it down to paper pulp and turn it into little geological artifacts. These are just some examples of how I've been interested in the intersections of art and information. And like Misael, I was also sort of in the background, often thinking we should have something where we get information from all the artists and have it all in one place, and wouldn't it be great if someone did that? And finally, it turned out that we've had the idea to actually get us all together and do it.
That we all had the idea. I was just, for whatever reason, yelling about it. I was just writing down commonalities and how they might relate to the census, but I'll get into that in a second. So this is the first artwork I ever did, which was, I think, very telling. This was just a simple kind of gesture of parking my car in what was then an arts district, the design district, and inviting people into my car during a sunset and wanting to share that moment with strangers potentially and seeing what would happen. But I think a lot of my core kind of concerns are already present here, and something that happened very kind of naively and in the spur of the moment, which is a need for kind of like a want to like follow my intuition and to just kind of trust in the mystery of that, and wanting to, and also trusting in the communal, right? To me, the art here was about kind of being in this space together and trusting each other, right? They're trusting that I'm not going to drive them off, the side of the road. I'm trusting that they're not going to try and steal my car or what have you, so all of that I think is still at play. I believe a lot can be learned when we kind of take a leap together.
This is like before Uber, no?
This is before Uber. This is before Uber, 2010. Just before. Maybe I invented Uber. Very quickly I started kind of like going out. I was doing things in art settings, but I still really like doing things outdoors. The beach towel and the picnic blanket, I think, have a lot of things that are still present in my work today and present in the census, right? Again, this trust and this gesture and kind of contributing in the ways that we can to make space to share and to build something that is greater than our individual parts. This is also the only artwork that's ever been memed. Thanks to Pee Wee Herman for that. He put it on his blog, and then it became a meme. I'm just kind of like cherry picking, but these are in chronological order. This is a piece that I did at MoCA, North Miami. I had the art handlers build, and the workers there built me a wall that had wheels that were hidden, and the wall was, throughout the run of the show, used in various ways to think about something as innocuous or everyday as the wall, as a wall, as something that could be art, and not only that, but could be moved and made and used to affect our understanding of the rest of the exhibition. So it was both a piece, but it was also used in various ways. Here it was used to get folks closer to a friend's artwork that was really small and detailed. Here it was used to do something illegal. Here it was used to kind of make smaller a projection that was washing over another piece. And so in here it was actually, during the opening, it was used to by the security to make their jobs easier, to keep people from the outside bringing drinks inside. And so it was a conversation not only with the art, but with the whole museum. So again, I think the concern here being the infrastructure of art which I would see the census in a similar way, right? These concerns kind of run through a lot of my practice. This was my thesis when I graduated from SAIC. There's a lot of moving parts to this, but very briefly, I staged my own exhibition inside of a Target that was underneath exactly 5 stories below where the MFA show was. So I was making a gesture of wanting to be outside of the system, but choosing a maybe more capitalist and kind of problematic system in its place as a gesture, right? So I was interested in kind of creating a dichotomy, right? And I would say that a lot of what we're doing with Artists for Artists and with the census is about creating alternatives. And sometimes those alternatives have to use the tools of the oppressor in some cases, which is a kind of difficult thing to think about, but it's a reality, right? We don't create in vacuums. I moved back from Chicago and I started working with the city of Miami Beach, and this was the big project that I did with them. This was a amphitheater made out of sand and sandbags, both borrowed from the city. We built it with volunteer labor, and then we would use the amphitheater to house programming, which included historical lessons such as this with Marvin Dunn, and performances and things like that, all kind of surrounding the idea of sand and its the different ways that it kind of permeates in our lives in known and unknown ways. Here, I think, again, is this idea that art can be infrastructure and that infrastructure affects art, which I think is key and led me to the invention of my own municipal parafictional city department, the Department of Reflection, which is a way that I've been working ever since, and the last project of which was Bridge Deconstruction, which was a year-long project that had lots of different kind of layers and included an exhibition. This is a piece from that exhibition. I did various blueprint collages for that project. And I also worked with students, one of which I met through that project is sitting right here. Jadane's been helping us with the census. So I think that is a really great example of how, you know, your artistic concerns become, you know, your political concerns become your everyday concerns, and they're all kind of connected. And the more you lean into that reality, the more things coalesce and kind of feed each other. I don't know, that's kind of, I'm just kind of stream of consciousness going with that part. But yeah, I don't know if y'all want to say any more words about our practice and how it relates to the census.
I mean, I feel like for me, the census is an extension of creating community for me, and I mean, I guess it's really simple for me of that. My personal politics are just about like wanting to create a better life for everyone, all the people I love, all the people I work with. And I do think that data, for better or for worse, computer technology and data is always seen as this objective, that it's not subjective, that it can be trusted, and that's not really the case. But I do think it is this sort of a language that can cross some barriers, right? Like, we as artists can talk to each other about the issues we face, but I think through the language and the tool of data, we're going to be able to connect with people outside of our communities. And in my own practice of making theater, it is about that. It's about connecting different types of people, different sort of walks of life to create something bigger than ourselves. And that's kind of how I approach the census work, I think.
And I would say for me, the connection with my work is primarily about, in that it's helping to create context, which is something that I'm always looking for in my practice. Not just making observations, but or commenting on them or what have you, but digging into the context in which they exist.
Yeah. I think in many ways we're all doing that, which I don't know, I've always felt that like the folks who are doing this have a lot in common in like already kind of like in the core of our practices. You know, I think creating context or like revealing truths, asking questions, like maybe in part those can be kind of cliches and ways of describing art, and you could, you know, maybe argue that all art is asking questions, but what questions are you asking, right? Like, I think we're all asking questions that are dealing with, you know, our personal lives, but how those things are political and how those things affect our you know, our daily lived lives in ways that, you know, could be potentially better. You know, I don't know. I also think about how a lot of what we do is a practice and it's a slow burn. You know, it's a life. It's you know, and all of that to say that it's really hard, like to exist doing the things that we do. You know, and so we are every day, I would argue, like hit up against the difficulties of life in the systems that, you know, that we live in, making the art that we do. And so it's only natural that we would feel and come across the need to do something like this.
I have a question. How many answers have you gotten?
I'd say like 400 now, full?
Yeah, like 450.
That are completed.
450 of them completed.
And I
When
think,
is it due?
The end of this month, the 31st.
and I think we have almost as many that were started but not yet completed.
Yeah, right, it's at 700,
Yeah.
800 that have been started and only 450 have been finished. Our original goal was 1,000, obviously, we'll see.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
Yeah.
But there is still time.
Yeah, and it really is only 20 minutes. And you can guesstimate if you want. I'm not telling you to fudge your facts, but you know, you can write in what you believe is true.
Yeah. And we also get that like a lot of folks are apprehensive to do this for various reasons. You know, that's part of the outreach and why we're sitting up here is to hope, you know, it's kind of like what do you call it? Like a political campaign. Like you're out there putting your face in public and trying to get people's trust, right? But you can only do so much for them to, you know, when it comes down to it, are they gonna, you know, take the time and the energy to give you some of their personal information and trust you with that? So we're hoping that maybe next time we'll get more through the act of doing right by them, essentially.
Right, I think we're all aware that we can't just ask people to trust us and expect that everybody will. We have to prove it first.
But also, there's so many examples of people doing untrustworthy things in Miami. I personally live in the Gables, and there's this whole political rigmarole going on where one party is sending out surveys that are supposed to be completely anonymous, but they are not anonymous, and they're looking at the people's answers and making a note of it. And so it's this whole crazy thing where you don't necessarily want to fill out any survey now because you don't know if you can trust them. Don't worry, I already filled this one out.
Well, I'm actually curious, like, what off top of your head, like you're here, like what about this project is trustworthy to you as someone who's maybe?
Oh, because I know Houston.
Okay, there you go. Who doesn't trust Houston? Yeah.
I mean, I would, if I were external to this project, I would be one of the people who is skeptical.
Yeah, you would.
And I work with data every day in my role as a librarian. And maybe that's part of the reason. I know how much data collection permeates our lives, and how a lot of the time it's collected for reasons that aren't necessarily benign. I care a lot about data privacy and data ethics, especially in relation to this project. There are a lot of people who, would legitimately not want to respond if they think that they're going to be identified for all kinds of very reasonable reasons. And so one of the things that we've been making sure to tell everybody is that we are not going to be looking at individual responses and trying to figure out who people are. We're going to be taking the whole data set and looking at it in aggregate. So we'll be pulling out percentages, we'll be, comparing these answers to those answers, but as a group.
And to the point of like why we're doing this, right? That's how we get to something effective. It's not going to be helpful in any way for any of the reasons why we're doing this to like pick apart like details, right? We need to know the whole, or at least that's what we're concerned with.
Any other questions or curiosities?
Where do you see how's the dissemination going to be utilized?
We're planning to make publications in print and for exhibition and other various kinds of tangible data visualizations. And we hope, once we have funding, to make an online interactive data dashboard where the public can interact with the data in aggregate, so that nobody ever is looking at the spreadsheet that is the core of the project, but is only able to slide this slider this way to see what happens to the data then, or to see what's this year like compared to that year, or what's this demographic compared to that demographic, and you only get the total answers, or the percentage or something like that, instead of being able to see any individual answer to anything.
And that way people can come in with a concern. They're really interested about like how Black artists of a certain age are dealing with housing, and they can use that information for maybe it's a book report, maybe it's a campaign of some sort. The idea being that this is about empowering our community to use the data in whatever ways they think the data can be helpful for.
We also hope institutions will use it.
Yeah.
Arts institutions.
Yeah, we've been, hopefully we're going to push for this, but there are some folks at the county who want to make it a little button, at least to start, that when you apply for funding, then maybe you have to say that you acknowledge that the census exists and that you read it, right? So just beginning to think about ways that, different kind of either funding sources or institutions can be, held accountable by our community to at least acknowledge that this information exists.
Well, and to have the information that's useful to them.
Yeah.
Not just to find out necessarily what's not working, but also if we find, that for these people this is working. What is happening over there that is working, and can someone replicate it over here?
And then in regards to the timeline, we're going to take a break for the next month and a half, and then when we regroup, we're going to start cleaning the data, analyzing it, and then eventually visualizing it. We'll do it in sections, so the same sections, or at least that's what we planned. the same sections that we have in the census, so housing, income, things like that, will apply to the way we analyze and visualize. And those, we hope, will be little like mini reports that will come out periodically as we do it, so that it's not just all at the same time in a year. But hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have everything done and we'll put out a big report with everything coming together. We'll probably have like little events for those like releases if everything goes to plan.
Yeah.
I'm talking with some groups that want to be a part of certain things that are kind of related to each of the topics.
I have a question. Okay, so beyond the census, how will the community grow and build throughout the rest of the year? How do you foresee that happening?
Of people, participants, or just in general? The
Yeah,
community?
because you've essentially sparked something and it's beyond just the data. So what does that look like for the rest of the year with everyone involved?
Well, I could see asking people, what do you want to know? What do you want us to dig into here? Are there questions that you have that we can answer now? And I could see then inviting collaboration in terms of addressing those specific answers / problems, etc.
And that reminded me, we totally forgot, one of the ideas we had for in these releases of the information, inviting artists to participate in that. So making art that responds to the data that like we've now visualized and we're looking at it and can analyze it, like either poetry or imagery or whatever, having different artists collaborate in these releases. So that is one way. And I guess just the activations to the release. But that is a good question to keep brainstorming of, how do we keep, or how do we use this to create community besides, just like a tool for the community. Yeah.
And I mean, and not to say this is the prime reason, but I mean, this did come out of a group, a larger group, Artists for Artists. And so that group is meeting monthly and we're already kind of, at our last meeting, we were kind of talking about a membership program and what that looks like and how that might function somewhere along the lines of I want to whisper this word, union. And that collective is waiting for the census material, and it'll give us something to work towards and work for. So that already exists as well. So that's just one example. I like keeping them separate, because I think it becomes mutually empowering. But that's one thing. Well, I think we'll end with the fact that, with saying that we encourage you to take the survey if you haven't done it yet. If you have, we have a week and 2 days left for you to take the survey.
Or finish the survey.
Finish the survey.
Yes, please finish.
Exactly. And so please spread the word. And if you hear of anything that's coming up where like artists are going to be present, chances are we don't know about it. So we've been discovering a lot of other art worlds through this process. Shout outs to the outreach team. And so please just go to our website. We have little flyers with a QR code or a zine that has like a little bit more information. Those are free to download on our website and print. You can print for free at a local library. And
To an extent.
To an extent, right? There's limitations. This QR code takes you to the survey. And I think that's...
You can sign up to our mailing
our
list
mailing
too.
list. Yes.
We'll update you on whatever random things come up.
Yeah, I mean, as we go along, you'll be the first to know when the reports come out. So.
Yeah.
And invited to things.
And invited to things.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.